Thank you, Jayla, for organizing this. It's great to be here, and hopefully we'll have a fun discussion. So, all right, I'm going to share the handout or share my screen so we can kind of look at the handout together while I talk. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yeah, all right. Just set up my screen so that. Okay, so I am going to be trying out some very new material on you guys today. So new that the title has changed since I sent Jayla my title. So now I'm calling the paper Activity Over Achievement, which is meant to kind of echo the cliche of journey over destination. So as you'll see, that's kind of I'm trying to put a philosophical spin on the kind of broad idea of journey over destination. So, but the place to start is, in everyday life, especially those of us who are academics, we spend a lot of time pursuing achievement. If you're a student, you spend a lot of time trying to get an A. If you kind of move on into your career, you might, try to get a promotion or win a prize or write a great book or discover something influential. And so, many of us seek achievements and take pride in our achievements. But you might step back and ask, like, what are we putting all this effort towards? Why work so hard to achieve things? And so, you might step back and ask, is achievement valuable? And if so, why is it valuable? So some philosophers think achievement is valuable, and they think it's valuable in a particular sense. So there's a, easy way in which everybody can say achievements are valuable, which is often they have good effects, right? So if you write a great book, then you cause the enjoyment of your readers. If you make a breakthrough scientific discovery, then your discovery might lead to better technology or to curing disease and have those types of effects. Or just in your own life, if you get a promotion, you make more money, and that's good for you. And so achievements can be instrumentally valuable in the sense that they can be valuable as means to other good things. The philosophers who say that achievement is valuable have in mind a stronger claim, which is that achievement is good in itself, that it's often what's called intrinsically valuable. It's good for its own sake. And so to achieve something is to kind of bring a good into your life or into the world, independently of whatever downstream effects it may have. And crucially, these philosophers think that achievements are valuable independently of and over and above they're just kind of making us feel good. The experience of achieving something is a good experience. It makes you happy. It makes you feel good. But they think the value of achievement doesn't boil down to it's kind of merely bringing about pleasurable or happy experiences either. That would be another instrumental way of understanding the value of achievement. And so these philosophers think independently of its effects, independently of even its effects on your experience, the fact that you have attained a kind of great achievement makes your life better. It makes the world a better place, and it makes you better off in and of itself, independently of whatever else it might cause. So in taking this position, these philosophers are implicitly rejecting a view called hedonism, which says that the only good things are kind of pleasure or conscious experiences. And I'm going to join them in that. I'm going to assume without argument that there are things other than pleasure, other than happiness and feeling and conscious experiences that are good. One way of motivating this very briefly is to say that it seems to me that when we have positive experiences, we often take those experiences to be responding to something of independent value. So why does it make me feel good when I achieve something? Well, the thought is, I feel good because I think I've done something valuable, because I think my achievement is itself good. And so you might think that you need to appeal to goods other than pleasure to explain why we take pleasure in things, or why it's warranted or appropriate to take pleasure in some things. But that's a throwaway argument. I'm really going to assume without argument the possibility of goods other than pleasure and happiness. And we can talk about that more in the Q&A if you want. So on these types of views, they're often called pluralists about value. They think there are multiple things that are of basic goodness, basic intrinsic goodness. So often next to achievement on the list, there's pleasure, friendship, knowledge, virtue. These are kind of listed as the various things that have value in themselves. And achievement is usually on a kind of pluralist list of the objective goods. So I'm going to investigate this view and suggest that the value of achievement really boils down to the value of activities. And that's a more general value, that some activities have value even though they're not achievements. And then I'm going to argue that even the activity of pursuing an achievement isn't valuable solely or primarily because of the extent to which it's an achievement. So my view is going to end up being skeptical about the value of achievement itself, while trying to explain the value of pursuing an achievement, the value of trying to win a gold medal or climb Everest. I'm not going to say you shouldn't try to do those things, but I'm going to say the value is kind of located in a different place than an achievement, an achievement theorist, as you might call them, somebody who thinks achievement is intrinsically valuable, where they would place the value. Okay, so first we need to talk just quickly about what is an achievement. And there's a fairly standard view accepted in the recent literature on achievement. So on the standard view, there are a few different conditions that something needs to meet in order to count as an achievement. So first, you have to intentionally and competently pursue a goal. So not only are you pursuing the goal, but the competence thing means that your pursuit of that goal is skilled or competent or shows your abilities in a certain way. Second, that goal has to be brought about. It has to succeed. It has to be fulfilled. So the goal that you're pursuing has to actually happen. And then there has to be a connection between those two. The goal's fulfillment has to be caused in the right way by your pursuit. So here's an example where that doesn't happen. Suppose I pursue climbing Everest. That's my goal. I put a lot of work into climbing Everest, and I get maybe halfway up, and then then I pass out from altitude sickness. But someone takes pity on me and comes in with a helicopter, picks me up, and puts me on the summit. And they did that because they saw how much I wanted to be on the summit of Everest, how much I wanted to summit Everest. So the goal's fulfillment of me getting on top of Everest is caused by my pursuit of that goal's fulfillment, but not in the right way, right? They're not connected in the right way. And so there's got to be the right kind of causal connection between the actions you do to pursue the achievement and the success of your goal. And then the final thing, and this is a very crucial condition, is that the goal has to be difficult to fulfill. So all the other conditions can really hold true of any successful goal pursuit. So they could be true of my successfully brushing my teeth or walking to my office. But those aren't achievements in the sense that these philosophers are after, in the sense that they think are valuable. Instead, for kind of a goal fulfillment, a successful goal pursuit to be an achievement, that goal has to be sufficiently difficult. And so, we don't say it's an achievement when someone does something easy and trivial and every day. It's only when they do something exceptional and challenging and difficult that we call it an achievement. So some philosophers who have both advocated the value of achievement and given this kind of breakdown of what the components of achievement are Gwen Bradford and our very own Tom Herka. So paradigm cases of achievements, winning a gold medal, I've already mentioned. Tom Brady winning 7 Super Bowls, that's a great achievement. So athletic victories, great art. So the writing of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or James Joyce's Ulysses, like those are great artistic or creative achievements. Scientific discoveries, the discovery of the theory of natural selection or of general relativity, those are great scientific achievements. And you might also, it's not merely in the, athletics and arts, and science, you also have achievements kind of more in the world, like political achievements of, passing civil rights reform or ending apartheid. Those are great achievements as well. Really, you can have almost anything that's a sufficiently difficult goal that you successfully pursue can count as an achievement. So, the various kind of weird things that happen in the Guinness Book of World Records, those can count as achievements. Okay, so now I want to break down 2 ways that we could think about the value of achievement, 2 things we might mean when we say that achievements are valuable. So one I call the outcome-focused achievement view. I think this is the everyday kind of common sense view of the value of achievement. So this view says that the outcome of achieving the goal is valuable. So the value is in the fact that you won the Super Bowl, or you summited Everest, or you discovered natural selection. Now, as Gwen Bradford has argued, you can't hold that the value of the outcome of achievement is just a matter of its intrinsic value, because it could be a great achievement to bring out a state that's actually in itself valueless. So standing on top of Everest on its own has no value. That it's actually rather miserable, right? The view might not be good. You're dying of altitude sickness. You're cold. There's nothing good in itself necessarily about you being on top of Everest. Instead, it's the fact that you got on top of Everest by means of your competent, successful goal pursuit that's valuable. And so the outcome is valuable in virtue of its relation to your activity of pursuing it. But still, the location of the value is in the outcome on this view. So the valuable thing is, you might say, the state of affairs of it's being the case that you achieve this goal in virtue of your activity. So the second view, which is closer to my view, but not all the way there, is the activity-focused achievement view. This says that the activity of achieving the goal is valuable. And so this value is located not just in the outcome, but in the whole activity of pursuing it. So actually, the thing that's valuable isn't just having won the Super Bowl, but it's all of the hours and hours of practice and the games leading up to it and the whole pursuit that led to winning the Super Bowl. And it's that whole activity that's valuable. But the activity is valuable because it's an achievement. So on this view, the only factors that matter to the value of the activity are the factors that make it an achievement. So the competence of the pursuit, the success of the pursuit, you're actually, winning the Super Bowl, getting to the end, and of course, the difficulty of the pursuit. So I'm going to argue against both of these views, but the arguments I'm going to give against them are separate and involve kind of 2 separate claims that are part of my ultimate view. Okay, so the way I'm going to go is I'm going to first just kind of lay out what my view is, or I guess the view I'm exploring, because maybe it's not well developed enough for me to say, this is what I think, though it's kind of what I think. I'm just going to kind of state it and then worry about some internal problems that it might have, And then I'm going to go to arguing for it. So first I'm going to tell you what it is, and then I'm going to give specific arguments in favor of this view against the outcome-focused view and then the activity-focused achievement view. So that's going to be the structure. So first, I think the value of an achievement pursuit, so call kind of any activity of pursuing some achievement an achievement pursuit. So writing a book, climbing Mount Everest, playing football, and so on. So I think the value of any achievement pursuit lies not in the outcome, but in the activity itself. So on this point, I'm with the activity-focused achievement view against the outcome-focused view. But I also think that the activity of an achievement pursuit is not valuable solely or even primarily in virtue of its being an achievement. Instead, I think that achievement pursuits are valuable just as an instance of the wider category of value of activities. And activities can have value even if they don't involve achievements at all, or at least don't involve difficult achievements. And they are valuable due to many different factors, of which the factors that make something an achievement are only part, and maybe not even the most significant part. So as I put it on handout, pursuing achievement is just one valuable activity among many. So we can break down the view I just said into two claims, each of which rejects one of the two views we've talked about. So claim one, which rejects the outcome view, says the value of achievement pursuits is located not in the outcome of successfully achieving one's goal, but instead in the activity of pursuing it. And then the second claim is that the value of achievement pursuits as activities is not directly proportional to the extent that they are achievements. So another way of putting it is that when achievement pursuits are valuable, the source of their value is not merely the fact that they are an achievement. Okay, so I've been talking about activities, and I want to now fill in that idea of what an activity is, because I'm using it in a somewhat kind of philosophical sense. So on the understanding I'm using, an activity can be understood as an extended action of a certain type. So activities have what are called constitutive rules and aims. So this is philosopher talk for rules and aims that make it the kind of activity that it is. So they constitute the activity as the kind of activity it is because they have these rules and aims. So games are the easiest example of this. And actually, I think this is why philosophers love analogies with games. Games show up all over philosophy. And I think it's because they're a very helpful example of an activity structured by constitutive rules and aims. So think of the activity of playing chess. So chess has certain rules that you have to follow in order to count as playing chess. So you can only move the pieces in certain ways, right? You can only move a pawn forward one tile at a time. You can only move a knight in the L shape, bishops diagonally, and so on. So if you move the pieces in different ways, if you take your knight and jump all the way over the board, or start moving your bishop up and down, then you're not playing chess anymore. You're just fiddling around with chess pieces. So in order to count as playing chess, you have to obey these rules. And there's also a constitutive aim in playing chess. In order to play chess, you have to try to win. You have to try to checkmate your opponent's king. So games are nice because they make the constitutive aims and rules very explicit. But I think other activities have this same kind of structure. So dances have certain rules about, what the moves are. And, you could think of the aim as something like expression or something like that. Jazz improvisation, the rules are much looser and the aims are much looser. And yet there are constraints on, what kinds of motifs, what kinds of keys you stay in. So there's a lot more room for maneuvering within the rules, but there still are rules that structure it as jazz and as improvisation. And I think even the activity of conversation can be understood in this way. There's a famous paper by David Lewis called Scorekeeping in a Language Game, which draws an extended analogy between conversation and baseball. And the idea is that in conversation, we are implicitly obeying certain rules about how to use words and how to follow up on what each other say, and kind of pursuing certain aims together, like trying to figure out, what we both think is true, or negotiate where to go to dinner or something like that. Okay, so that's my background understanding of what activities are. What makes activities valuable? So I want to appeal to the value of activities in general. Can I say something about what makes them valuable if I don't think it's just that they're achievements? The answer is that I don't have an account of this. It's hard to say. I think the value of an activity is a kind of holistic matter of many of its different features and properties. But I think it's kind of an unfair question to ask almost. Compare the question, what makes art good? There isn't a single factor that makes art good, right? There are lots of different features of art and the way that they combine that can make them good in lots of different ways. But we can say some things about what makes activities more and less valuable. One clear part is how well your actions fit with the rules and aims of the activity. So if you play a wrong note, that makes the activity of playing the symphony less valuable as a symphony. If you cheat in a game, that makes the game less valuable as a game. You're kind of harming the value of the game by cheating. But there are other factors. Not every activity that's impeccably done, counts as very valuable. So I could obey all the rules and aims of counting blades of grass, and that doesn't make my activity valuable. And so we have to ask questions like, how engaging and absorbing is the activity? How pleasurable is it? How deep is it? How far into it can you go and still find new things? How edifying is it for your kind of development as a person? How beautiful or elegant is the activity? So all of these are going to be factors that play in. And, on my view, I want to be very expansive about what can contribute to the value of an activity. Okay, so now I want to quickly address some worries about, so my kind of broad view is that when we're pursuing achievements, what really is valuable about our pursuit isn't the achievement itself, it's the activity of pursuing it. And you might think this gets the psychology wrong. Like, I can't think of my achievement pursuit this way and still really pursue achievement. Because when I'm trying to win a game, I'm trying to get a gold medal, or I'm trying to summit Everest, my goal isn't just to play the game. That might be my goal if I'm playing a casual game of tennis, but not if I'm playing Wimbledon. My aim is to win. And you might actually think the value of the activity requires me to take on that aim. I can't fully absorb myself in the game if I'm not trying to win and trying hard to win. And, how can you dedicate your life to becoming the greatest quarterback of all time if you think, winning the Super Bowl doesn't matter at all? Like, you have to care about it for its own sake, it seems. So this is a deeper issue that I think the ultimate paper is going to take a while to talk about. But my quick reply is that the goal that's the focus of our actions in our activity can come apart from the kind of ultimate reason for our doing the activity or the ultimate source of its value. So a kind of everyday example of this is instrumental activities, activities where you're pursuing something that's only instrumentally valuable as a means to something else. So walking to work. When I'm walking to work, my reason for walking, the ultimate kind of source of the value of my walking, has to be traced way out, right? I'm walking to work in order to do my job, in order to make money, in order to, buy happiness, I guess, or something like that. And actually, I might not be able to trace out exactly what the ultimate ends are. Like, what do I really want out of life? That is why I want money. And yet, I don't have to think about that in order to walk to work, right? The focus of my action is just getting to my office. And I don't think about the kind of wider reasons why it's valuable for me to get to my office. I just focus on this kind of intermediate goal of getting to work. And a recent theory of games, a really excellent book called Games, The Art of Agency by C.T. Nguyen, makes a kind of big point about this in his analysis of how game playing works, the psychology of game players. He calls this striving play. He thinks that the attitude of at least a casual game player is to take on the aim of winning in order to enable the activity of playing the game. So, if you are playing a casual board game with your friends, if you kind of step back, it doesn't matter so much whether you win, right? The purpose of playing the game is to have a fun evening with your friends. And actually, you can spoil it by caring too much about winning. And yet, when you play the game, it's not going to be fun unless you try to win, unless you focus on the aim of winning. And so he thinks we just regularly do this, where we kind of absorb ourselves in focusing on an aim when that aim isn't the real source of the value, but instead the activity itself is the source of the value. And so I think we're doing something similar when we pursue achievement, is we absorb ourselves in the aim of achieving something. But really the source of value, the thing that makes that worthwhile, is the value of the activity itself. This is why I originally titled the paper The Game of Achievement, is because of this analogy. Okay, one more worry is that this view seems to imply that it doesn't matter whether you succeed or fail in your achievement. And yet it seems like it's clearly better if you win the Super Bowl than if you, play excellently but just barely lose due to a, last-minute penalty in the red zone. And I think the answer is to say that successful activities are better as activities. So one of the things I said matters to the value of an activity is how well the constitutive rules and aims are satisfied. And so the constitutive aim of playing football is to win. And so succeeding in that aim can make the activity as a whole more valuable. But that doesn't mean the value is solely due to the success. The activity would still have a great deal of value even if you don't win. But instead, the ending is kind of an important part of the whole of the activity and one part of what contributes to its value. So I think that whether or not your activity succeeds in its goal is kind of like whether or not your novel has a good ending. It might be a really important part of the value of the overall novel that it has a good ending. But that's not where all the value is, right? The rest of the novel also matters. It's how the whole thing fits together. And you could have if the ending is bad, that doesn't necessarily ruin the whole novel. So, seasons 1 through 5 of Game of Thrones are still good despite what happened later. Some people might disagree about that, but, that's the idea. Okay, so now let's move on to why I think we should adopt this view. So first, I want to argue for claim 1, which says that the value is in the activity, not in the outcome. And so this is against the outcome-focused achievement view. And my argument here appeals to our evaluative experience. What kinds of value can we really appreciate and experience fully? And the idea is that if you look at our experience of the value of succeeding in an outcome, in a goal, that experience is actually rather fleeting and shallow. Well, if you look at our experience of the value of activities themselves, that experience can be sustained and profound. And so if we trust our evaluative experience as kind of corresponding to the facts about value, then this difference in our experience seems to suggest that the real value lies in the activity, not in the outcome. So start with the experience of success. Suppose, your greatest dream is achieved. Now what? You won the Super Bowl 7 times. What do? I guess you go back and forth about whether to retire from football. The thought is that there's actually a rather commonly reported experience of people who have achieved great things of feeling depressed and unfulfilled and nihilistic after they achieve their goals. So one example of this I like is Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride dedicates his whole life to swordsmanship in order to avenge the murder of his father. At the end of the movie, he finally does it. You killed my father, prepare to die. And then he does it and he's like, well, now what the heck do I do? He has this kind of little existential crisis at the end of the movie of, I've spent my whole life pursuing this goal. Like, now I feel kind of empty. There's actually a phenomenon called the post-Olympic blues, where somebody who even has succeeded at the Olympics feels depressed afterwards. They feel lost and kind of cast about. And it seems like what's going on here is that getting what they wanted doesn't seem to last as a source of happiness. It seems to actually fade away rather quickly. Like, there is a mood boost. It's, you're feeling good when you're on the podium getting the gold medal. But quickly that happiness, that experience of the value of achievement seems to dissipate. Kieran Setia, a philosopher at MIT who was actually my dissertation advisor, has a paper titled The Midlife Crisis, which is about this, about how success in your goals can actually lead to a kind of crisis of value. And that this sometimes happens in midlife when somebody, has achieved a lot of their youthful goals. So John Stuart Mill had this kind of crisis in his early 20s. He was precocious, as Setia says, had his midlife crisis in his 20s because he had been extremely high achieving, extremely successful in all of his pursuits. And he reached this moment where he said, suppose that all of your greatest dreams were achieved. Would that bring you any joy? And he said, this voice in my heart says, no. And the question is, what's missing there? And Setia's diagnosis is that the problem comes with focusing too much on goal pursuit, on what he calls telic activities, and activities that have a telos or end goal. And so Setia suggests that we should focus on atelic activities, activities like John Stuart Mill goes to reading poetry, or going on a walk, or conversing with friends that don't have a kind of internal goal or end. I think of it a little bit differently. I think telic activities are fine. Pursuing a goal is fine. The problem is in how you value the goal. So I would put it as we should atelically value our telic activities. So you should value the activity itself, not just the goal. But that activity could be the activity of pursuing a goal. So one reason why I think the experience of success is fleeting is a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. So research in kind of positive psychology or happiness research has established that people very quickly kind of adapt to either good or bad stimuli in their life. Sometimes this is called the hedonic treadmill. The idea is that, you are kind of going along at a baseline level of happiness and something good happens and your mood goes up. And then very quickly it goes back to your baseline. Something bad happens, your mood goes down. Very quickly it goes back to baseline. And I think this is what happens with great success. You thought that you wanted this so badly and getting it makes you happy for a short while, but then you adapt and it's old news and you feel, kind of lost because you don't have another thing to pursue. Now, contrast this with the experience of value we have when we value an activity for its own sake and engage in an activity that we value. So this experience is called flow. You might have heard about it in some kind of self-help or pop psych books. So flow is a state of deep absorption in an activity that is valued for its own sake. So when you're lost in, your work or a game or a conversation and you lose kind of awareness of yourself and of the passage of time. You're like, oh my God, 3 hours have gone by. Who knew? And you just kind of are fully engaged in an activity that's kind of fully absorbing to you, that many people describe as a peak experience in their life. It's one of the best things in their life that they seek out. Actually, flow was discovered because of psych studies that did what's called experience sampling, where they asked people, what their experiences were like and asked them to rate subjectively how good those experiences were. And the best experiences were the flow experiences, were the ones where they were deeply engaged in work or play. So the famous researcher on this is this guy with the long last name that's pronounced Csikszentmihalyi, as in cheeks sent me high. That's the trick for pronouncing it. And importantly, flow is not only a wonderful experience, but it's also not subject to adaptation. Just because you've done it before doesn't mean you can't get absorbed in flow again. It doesn't become old news. I think that's partially because flow is a matter of appreciating the activity while it's happening, rather than just kind of appreciating the fact that something happened. States of affairs outcomes are these kind of abstractions. It's hard to grab onto them and appreciate and experience them directly. While an activity is something you participate in, something that happens in real time that you can experience. And I think that's one of the reasons why the experience of its value is so much more profound. So I think that if these experiences are to be trusted, they indicate that the value that we can find in activities is actually kind of deeper, more lasting, and more valuable than the value that we can find in the kind of mere attainment of an outcome. So that's the argument against the outcome of focused achievement view, and so for claim 1. But remember that the activity-focused achievement view agrees with me that the value is in the activity. And so they could accept all these arguments and say, yeah, exactly. That's why the value lies in the activity of achievement. So I have a few different points to kind of resist the activity-focused achievement view. The idea is that what makes achievement pursuits valuable isn't the fact that they're achievements. And so one way of motivating this is to point first to the fact that many activities that don't involve at least significant achievements are valuable in themselves. And these activities, importantly, aren't made any better by being made more difficult. So the list I give on the handout: deep conversations with friends, going on a walk in a beautiful park, playing with your child or your niece or nephew, dancing with a bunch of friends at a club or at a concert, singing or playing music, reading a novel. These activities are valuable in themselves, and while there might be versions of them that end up being kind of achievement-like, professional dance or opera singing or literature study, that might kind of fall into the more achievement-y categories. There are versions of these that are valuable that don't involve any significant achievement and wouldn't be made better if you made them harder. Like a conversation with friends is kind of maximally valuable when it comes easily, right? When everything just seems to flow. But this on its own is not a problem for the achievement theorists, because they can say that there are just two different things on our list of goods. Remember, we're pluralists. We're saying that lots of different things are basic goods. So there might just be the value of achievement, and specifically the value of achievement activities, and then the value of other activities like playing with your kids. So I point to the value of non-achievement activities just to motivate. My ultimate idea is going to be that the value of achievement activities is just an instance of this more general type of value. But the achievement theorists can just say, well, no, they're just two separate types of value here. So now I want to give reasons to doubt that achievement is a basic good, even understood as the value of achievement activities. So the first reason is to look at the value of lives that don't involve any great achievements. So the vast majority of people don't achieve very significant things in their lives, at least don't achieve the kinds of things I was listing as examples, like winning the Super Bowl and climbing Everest. And they don't strive to achieve great things, right? It's not like, oh, I would try to win the Super Bowl, but I'm just not good enough at football. It's instead, that's just not one of the things I want out of life. And I think many of these people don't view their lives as lacking because they do not have some great historical achievement to their name. And I think they're right in this. I think that a life without some grand achievement in it can be a fully flourishing, wonderful, deep, profound, meaningful life. Now, the achievement theorists can say, sure, but it would just be better if they also, discovered the cure for cancer. So this would just be one additional value. Of course, you can have a good life without it, but your life would be better with it. But I think that while that could be true, that's compatible with this observation, I think the fact that you can have what seems like a fully valuable and meaningful life without substantial achievements suggests that achievement isn't one of the basic goods, isn't one of the fundamental items on our list of goods. Because if you look at the other basic goods that usually show up on people's lists, a life lacking in one of those would be profoundly lacking. So take friendship is put as one of the basic goods, or like close personal relationships. I hope you would all agree that a life that included no personal relationships, no friendships or other kinds of intimate relationships would be lacking something very important, would be just a less valuable life, and not just a marginally less valuable life, but a severely lacking life. Doesn't mean we all have to be extroverts, but that some close relationships are important. Similarly, for a basic good like pleasure, like a life lacking in pleasure would be a severely lacking life. And I think a life lacking in valuable activity, understood as the more general category that includes like conversation and play, would also be a severely lacking life. And it doesn't seem like the same is true for achievement. So the final thing I want to point out, so the first 2 points are kind of saying that achievement doesn't seem to be necessary for the value of activities. But I finally want to say that achievement isn't always sufficient for the value of activities. Making an activity more of an achievement doesn't always make it better. So this is because of instances of what I'm calling valueless difficulty. So the achievement view seems to predict that the more difficult an activity is, the more of an achievement it is, and so the more valuable it is. But I think difficulty doesn't always add value. So actually, Gwen Bradford uses an example that I think illustrates this point. So she compares 2 novelists, and she says, suppose they write an equally good novel, but one of them, has an easy time, like finds this, super easy, and, their life is going swimmingly and so on. And the other novelist is struggling with depression and has to, painfully pull themselves out of bed and, force themselves to the writing table and struggle to keep themselves motivated and keep the rest of their lives going as they're writing this novel. And yet they still kind of struggle through it and achieve the writing of the novel. And Bradford says, look, even though the novels are equally good, of course, the depressed person's novel is a greater achievement because of what they overcame to write it. And I think that's absolutely right. It is a greater achievement. But I don't think any value has been added to their lives by the fact that they faced depression while writing their novel. I think their activity of writing the novel has not been made any more valuable by the fact that it had this obstacle of depression. And this isn't just because depression sucks so much, it's not just because it's so bad. Like you could say, well, it's made better by the fact that it's a greater achievement, but it's made worse by the fact that it's depression. No, I don't think there's an additional value that's just outweighed. I think just no value at all has been added to their lives or to their activity. So similarly, if you have to overcome addiction or ADHD in order to write your novel, I think no value has been added, even though you're writing it is a greater achievement. So this is a case of making an activity more of an achievement, but not making it more valuable. So a similar kind of case is an athlete has an injury. Overcoming that injury and succeeding anyway is a greater achievement. So if I, win the Super Bowl after tearing my ACL, I have achieved something greater than if I won the Super Bowl with no injuries. Again, though, I don't think that an injury adds value to an athlete's activity. I think it makes it more of an achievement. It makes it more admirable. They might have personal growth as a result of overcoming the injury, but I don't think their activity has been enhanced by the injury. Finally, imagine that a scientist in the course of their discovery has to cut through a bunch of bureaucratic red tape. They have to spend a bunch of time, obtaining, equipment and applying for grants and, dealing with regulations and so on. So they have to work really hard, even just in order to be able to do their science. But all that work is kind of not part of the scientific discovery itself. Makes their scientific discovery much more difficult than somebody who say, everything was all taken care of, they had infinite money, it's all good. So their activity is more difficult, but I don't think, and it's more of an achievement, but I don't think it's more valuable. So I think what this shows is that in order to add value to your activity, the difficulty has to be of the right kind. It has to be suited to the activity. So a formidable opponent can make an athlete's activity of winning Wimbledon more valuable and make it more of an achievement. But that's the right kind of difficulty. It's difficulty that makes the activity itself deeper, more absorbing, more beautiful, and so on. And so I think difficulty only makes an activity better when it's difficulty suited to the activity, internal to the activity. Like I generated these examples by putting in obstacles that really have nothing to do with the activity. Another example is like if your keyboard really sucks, it's harder to write your novel, but that doesn't add any value to your achievement. So I think what that indicates is that the value really lies not in the extent to which it's an achievement, but in the nature of the activity itself. And the reason why more difficult activities often are more valuable isn't just because they're achievements, but instead because difficulty can make activities deeper, more absorbing, more edifying, more challenging, and more beautiful. Okay, so I've gone longer than I expected to, so I will just quickly end on a personal note. This paper grew out of my own obsession with achievement. I spent much of my life placing a really high value on achievement. I don't think there is a philosopher who doesn't. You can't get a PhD in philosophy and not, fantasize about being the next Kant or Plato. Maybe there are some humble folks who pull that off, but I'm not one of them. And this paper arose out of me questioning the value of achievement after seeing the basically harmful effects it was having on my life, my pursuit of achievement. And so I want to point to some kind of psychological benefits of thinking in this way that at least I've experienced. One is that comparison matters less. So in our kind of everyday notion of achievement, it's really a kind of zero-sum game. It's winning, it's beating other people, right? It's being the best, not just being good. And I think that's true if we're focused on how much your activity is an achievement. It's a greater achievement if you beat other people, if you're better than other people, because that's a difficult thing to do. But I don't think it's plausible that the fact that you're better than other people makes your activity itself more valuable. And so suddenly, comparing yourself to others seems to become less relevant to the value of what you're doing. It makes me think differently about how I choose activities. So when I'm deciding what topic to write on, I'm not just asking like, what's going to be the next, Plato's Republic? What's going to make the biggest splash? I'm instead asking, what am I curious about? What's going to be a valuable, interesting activity of engaging with a question? I think thinking of achievement pursuit as just kind of one valuable activity among many can help you to appreciate the value of other activities and see them as value of the same kind, and so not competing with one another necessarily. So I've taken up painting, and I'm not going to do any great achievements in it. I'm not going to be a great painter, but I am going to paint some bananas and an apple. And I'm going to find that to be like enjoyable, engaging activity. And the thought is that's valuable in the very same way that my writing philosophy is. Even though I'll attain much less achievement in painting than I hopefully will in philosophy. And finally, the stakes of success become lower. So yes, it does add to the value of your activity if it ends in success, if it ends in some kind of achievement. I think that's something that we should all agree about, is that it is better if you succeed in your goal. But the stakes aren't as high because not all of the value of what you're doing is contingent on whether or not you succeed in your goal. And so for me, it makes me think, thank God, my life won't be less worthwhile if I'm not one of the great philosophers with capital G. So thank you very much.